Hi beautiful souls, welcome back to the channel, Soul Awakening with Shantia. Welcome to this deep dive into Jupiter in Ardra. Now I have been waiting some time to make this video talking about this transit coming through, but in general I wanted to focus on the themes coming through with Jupiter in Ardra. So even if this, beyond the transit, the evidence, the research that I'm sharing with you today can apply to your placement in Ardra. It can apply to other people's placements in Ardra, Jupiter in Ardra. So if you have this placement in your birth chart, or you know people, or you're interested in the energy of Ardra, this is what we're going to be focusing on. And the beauty of Jupiter is it's the teacher, it's the guru. So Jupiter is going to be teaching us a lot about Ardra during the transit, and it's also, today in this video, we're going to be talking about what Jupiter has to say about Ardra. And so it begins, the rebellion. Stay aware, because in this chaotic hive mind of trade winds, one may become easily influenced and distracted by petty dramas. But you must remember the work stays the same. The work is always with yourself. What hits you next may either be a storm of information and psychic impressions, or a much needed cleanse. It is up to you to choose. Divinity is rocking the boat within, but many may deflect this and project this outwards. This is your opportunity to be still in the storm and let it dissolve what is not real to reveal what is. Neti, neti. As the inner rebel becomes agitated from within, gently process your thoughts and emotions behind the scenes to welcome deeper layers of truth. So Jupiter and Ardra, as soon as I knew this transit was coming, I was so looking forward to diving further in. Now, if you want to know about this transit, the energies, the 2025 transit video I made on my other channel that I will link down below can let you know about, some of what this transit is bringing and how all the other planets are also influencing and are a part of this transit. So today we're not going to be talking about this transit specifically in your chart. We're just going to be talking about the theme that's showing up collectively and personally. But if you want to know about those personal transits, go ahead and check out that video I did for the 2025. I essentially summarized all of the planets for each of the zodiac signs, whether it's your ascendant, moon, or sun. You can look into that on the other channel. Today we're just going to be diving deep and appreciating the energy of Jupiter in Ardra. And I'm picking up that this is probably going to be a really long, in-depth video, so be prepared for that. There was so much that wanted to come through, and even as I was coming to make this video today, I was like, oh, I'm still getting more information. This is incredible. So my challenge with talking about this Jupiter and Ardra is just making sure not to speak too fast, so as to communicate these concepts and ideas clearly. Now let's start with our first image here. And the words divine anarchy. So this is what I'm picking up for the Jupiter in Ardra transit. Now, when I choose images, words, titles, it's intuitive. It's an intuitive process. I just go with my gut. I go with the flow of what I feel drawn to, what's interesting, and I try to align with finding some sort of balance. And then sometimes I add some elements into the image to see if it needs a little bit of editing here and there to communicate this concept. The words in the title that wanted to come through was divine anarchy. Now that sounds really intense, but I'm telling you, these transits that are unfolding these next few years are quite intense. Everything's always going to be intense. And the reason why Jupiter and Ardra is so intense is because it's influencing the Pisces energy. Jupiter is one of the biggest planets that influences our chart, our personal transformations. And Jupiter is the dispositor for Saturn, because Saturn is sitting in Pisces. Rahu was in Pisces. So Jupiter has been impacting all of these other planets as they're sifting through these energies. Jupiter is influencing all of them. So when we dive into this might actually clarify for you what you've been going through, or perhaps what you're going to start going through, because I think Jupiter and Ardra is going to set a lot of things off once this transit starts. So this transit starts on June 13 and it goes to August 13. So that is about a 2-month period. In my other videos, I mention dates that are close but slightly off. I apologize for that. Sometimes I think when I'm getting the dates, maybe like my finger hits a button and I don't read the numbers right. But I double checked this one before this presentation, and I definitely need to make sure. I try to double and triple check, but sometimes I miss it. And sometimes planets go retrograde, right? So there might, I don't know if there is that, but this is actually the accurate date for Jupiter and Ardra's transit. Ardra is in 6 degrees to 20 degrees Gemini. So divine anarchy is what we're picking up here. We have this beautiful, gorgeous Jupiter at the center of the image with electricity emanating around it. We have these intense clouds. We have this blue and purple energy. And we have Shiva sitting at the center, very centered, very calm. So this is the advice for Jupiter and Ardra, is to stay centered, to stay calm, to find that center within yourself in spite of any kind of intense energies. And this is definitely a mental, emotional processing that's happening within us. When you're not projecting your problems outwards, you realize that a lot of it is just happening inside of you. And that's the most important thing to focus on, is how you respond to certain situations. All right, let's dive into the intensity of this Jupiter and Ardra presentation. So some of the main themes that are going to be showing up for this transit, we have Jupiter. Jupiter is law, and Jupiter is the guru. Add Ardra into the equation, which is Ardra is about that mental and emotional purification storm. You got here a lawful karmic purification process that's quite intense and is here to teach you something. You know, at times the guru can be strict. And one of the nakshatras, actually Vishaka, is ruled by Jupiter. And Vishaka always makes me think of Shakti, or lightning. And it makes me think of how sometimes we have these lightning insights that help to bring awareness to our situations. And that's exactly what Jupiter and Ardra is also bringing here. So Ardra is in Gemini. Ardra is focusing on communication, whether this is oral or written. And this is also about mutable energy. Gemini is about mutable energy change. So this is activating some sort of shift or change in our lives. It's also connected to the internet, social media, knowledge, which is about gnosis. Gnosis is about knowing. So the opposite of gnosis is psychosis. So actually, Jupiter and Ardra can bring both. It could create a psychosis or a gnosis of truth. But Jupiter really creates that impact, right? I think Mercury and Ardra could create a psychosis or a gnosis. But Jupiter and Ardra is actually trying to gear you and push you towards gnosis, because Jupiter is like that teacher. It has certain expectations, divine laws that it's tied to. So it upholds you to higher standards, higher expectations, higher standards. The other main thing that's coming through is divine and collective anarchy. So anarchy sounds like a really intense word, right? It sounds like a weapon almost. And from what we've seen in movies, and one of the clips I'm going to show you is from V for Vendetta, it might express that anarchy is a bad thing or a negative thing. But in this case, the true sense of anarchy is about self-governing. This is where we learn how to exercise self-control. We learn how to use, acknowledge, and stay true to ourselves. We don't let something else govern us, which is, in this case, it would be like the matrix. It would be some sort of system. That's what the government is. It's a system that governs you. But anarchy, this is going to call for people to rise up and say, no, we don't want this. And you're going to be seeing that on the collective level. But personally, you have to think about how you can take advantage of this energy. And what it's here to teach you is how to self-govern yourself. So under divine and collective anarchy, we have rebellion, we have rebel. So Ardra, if there is a one word I'd like to give to Ardra, it would probably be the rebel with the cause. And the cause is Jupiter, right? This is why we do things the way that we do. This is why we have a guru. The guru is here to teach you how to abide by the divine laws. The guru is here to show you the rules of the game and how to operate so that you're able to live a better quality life. So rebel with the cause, rebellion. You may be seeing protests, Declaration of Independence. So I actually have the Declaration of Independence chart, July 4th, 1776. This actually, supposedly United States was established on that date. And on that date, there were a couple planets that were transiting through Ardra. And I think it perfectly represents our country. Now, I actually looked over it quickly. I didn't look over it long. I just go with my intuition. And I also follow along with those clues that divinity is guiding me towards. And lo and behold, we have here Jupiter in Ardra. Jupiter in Ardra, Venus in Ardra. So this is showing me that that is the personality of the United States. This is what we're going to be picking up, the rebellion that's happening all around the world. There are also different countries who have similar energies of that Ardra. In order to start a new government, you have to have some sort of rebellion. You have to have a group of people, a collective who say, this is what we want. People should want to rise up and say, we don't want this, right? So they rose up against, what was it, the British aristocracy, and they said, no more. We don't want to pay those taxes to the queen. We doing all this work over here. We want to be our own people and create our own free land. But truly, the Declaration of Independence on a spiritual level, this is about claiming self-governance. So you never want to be under anyone else's system. You don't have any control. This is the end of silence. So whatever people have been quiet about, you're going to hear more whistleblowers come out and express their truth. You're going to hear more people express their truth. You're going to hear undeniable truths that are going to be shared, that people have had conspiracy theories. This is a time where conspiracy theories have become reality, and it's as apparent and interface as we can possibly see it. This is what Jupiter and Ardra is activating, that rebellion. So the end of the silence, but this is also going to create more mental stimulation. That's why it's going to be important to be very, very grounded, because, you know, Jupiter and Ardra is navigating us towards a storm, a purification storm. And the whole point of the purification storm is to learn how to be still in the storm, to navigate the storm, to ride the storm, no matter what. We also have here news information, and misinformation, which is quite common in communications. This also takes me to 1984, the book by George Orwell, which I remember reading in 9th grade, and them referring to news and propaganda. Now, life is already full of a lot of propaganda. You're going to see a little bit of both, okay? So I never see energies as like, oh, this is the solution, the pain is over. No, we still live in an illusion. We still live in a matrix. It's designed to divert you. It's designed to confuse you. So you might think it's solving a problem. It's not. It's never solving a problem. You have to always go inward within yourself to see the truth for what it is and to make peace with life as how it wants to unfold. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge, I think, during this time, because people are going to feel more of that inclination to speak up, to rebel, to say, no, we're against this. This is not the truth. And some of it's going to be helpful. Some of it's not going to be helpful. By the end of the day, when we just tune into ourselves, that's what's the most important work we can do. So news, information, misinformation, it's going to be increased. So YouTube is going to be, I imagine, quite wild during this initial Jupiter and Ardra period. There's a reckoning. So this is a reckoning. We have a wrecking ball here. There's a reckoning that's coming. This is also taking me to Tom Cruise's movie. What is it? The Mission Impossible movies. Yeah, so there's some sort of Mission Impossible that's being activated in us. There's a reckoning where we're having to come to terms with certain things. Now, truly, this is about the destruction of false ideas. That's the reckoning. Oh, I thought this was true. And this is going to be a period where we realize that the thing that we thought was real, the thing that we thought was true, the illusion we thought was real, it falls apart. It falls apart. And the way that reality unfolds, and even the Matrix, is that realities collapse and then new falsehoods are created. So you really have to stay centered so you know what truly is false. And you have to find the discernment. You have to find the sobriety in the craziness here. Yeah, and I don't know, I'm being drawn to that word of sobriety, and how, you know, let's say, you know, you're on something and it completely warps your perception. This is a time where people are going to be sobering up, but it's like an internal sober up that's happening, even though we've been dosed with propaganda, we've been dosed with false ideas and concepts. We have to try to keep our eyes awake and stay as sober as possible. We have to sober ourselves up. So V for Vendetta. The main theme that came through from that movie was that ideas are eternal. Ideas are eternal, as is the truth. It's eternal, it's everlasting. It cannot be collapsed, the true truth. Words are powerful. Perspectives are powerful. And we can inspire radical change. We can inspire radical change, or be inspired to radically change in our lives. Let ourselves be inspired to radically change. So this is why Jupiter's influence is so important. So we have Mercury. Mercury's going to be transiting through Ardra around the same time. And Mercury is the ruler, the first ruler of Ardra, and then it's Rahu here. So there's a trickle here. We got Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, and Rahu in the image. So there's a connection. There's this loop that's being created where there's a full circle moment that's happening with Mercury and it being a dispositor, and it's connected to Rahu. So Mercury is this dispositor for Jupiter. Jupiter is a dispositor for Saturn. Saturn is a dispositor for Rahu. So there you go. Once Mercury enters into its own sign, its own nakshatra, it gains a lot of intense power here. So Mercury is also going to be conjunct Jupiter during this period in Ardra, Gemini. So as someone who has a Mercury conjunct Jupiter, oh my goodness, the love for knowledge, the love for learning is so intense. So this is beautiful. I've actually heard someone say that, when these planets are close together, they starve, one starves one another. And yeah, there's a catch-22 with any placement in a chart, but I wouldn't focus on that. Divine always tells us to focus on what we can do with what we have and to make peace with what we can't change. So with this Mercury conjunct Jupiter, this is offering the opportunity. Like Mercury could be about communication and teaching, learning things, and Jupiter is about knowledge. So this is about what really stands the test of time. What is the best piece of advice or knowledge that we can use to enhance the quality of our life? So this is what's creating a beautiful learning experience for those of us who are so interested in research, but also for those of us who are just interested in learning a new way or new mode of being. I feel like that's actually going to bring a very pleasant energy to this transit where we're just enjoying the learning process. We're enjoying actually the storm. We're actually finding it fascinating as opposed to feeling resentful towards it. So Sun is joining Gemini on June 14th, around that period of time. So this is essentially right after Jupiter enters into Ardra. And that's kind of incredible, the timing of this here. So Sun joins Gemini, and then it enters into Ardra around June 21st. So Sun is going to be there. Sun is going to be there. So I have in another image, we have here Mercury conjunct Jupiter, and then we got Sun there. Oh my goodness. That's insane. Okay. And Sun is about honor, integrity, respect. It's about lighting up our path. It's about truth and honesty. So the truth that comes out, albeit if it is shocking, it's going to brighten up our spirits. It's going to actually help us to believe in ourselves and one another during this period. So it's a very inspiring, this energy here, Mercury, Jupiter, Sun, inspiring. Mercury, Jupiter is also a performer, a stage goer, someone who, I got from Vedic Astrology. He talked about this conjunction. He said that this conjunction creates someone who likes to communicate. Okay. I have this conjunction. So he's absolutely right. We love talking. It's actually a celebratory, it's a bit of a performance for us, but it's not like a fake. Like we're just so passionate about our ideas and concepts that want to come true. You have Sun there, which by the way, I do have Sun conjunct my Mercury and Jupiter. Funny enough, but it's a little further out. There's just this radiant passion for knowledge, for truth, for learning. And with Gemini, it kind of lightens the energy and the load. I have this in Virgo. So Virgo is about sifting through, it's about purification too. Whereas Gemini is about, expression, it's about concepts and ideas. And those initial concepts and ideas without, landing on the perfect way of doing something, the perfect way of communicating. It's more like, I want to experiment. So this energy feels super experimental, very good for creativity. So Ardra is the rebellion. Saturn is the movement, the ocean. So we have a rebellion that's coming through and a movement, but it's going to be very much a rise up movement where you're going to see people come together and support these ideas and these concepts. And they're going to be like, yeah, I believe in that too. I believe we should do this too. I believe we should do this too. So Gemini is, let's get back to some basic concepts, which I also want to focus on when I'm talking about these zodiac signs, the Rashis, the Grahas, which by the way, Jupiter is a Graha, and I'm still learning so much, but at some point when I do this series about each of the planets, Grahas, I'm going to make sure to use that terminology and also do more research so I understand why it's important to call them Grahas, not planets. And part of what Prash Trivedi PT teaches is that Earth is a plane. Earth is the planet, the plane. And the other ones are actually the parts of our consciousness, and they're guiding us. They're Grahas, they're conscious energies that are influencing us, but they're not the same as Earth. That's why it's important to differentiate between them. So Gemini is about writing, communication, ideas, the internet. Gemini is this energy of immaturity sometimes because you're just maybe learning. This is where the baby starts reaching out to its mama. It starts really talking. I wrote baby talking, baby crying. The baby's learning how its communication styles, what its communication style is, or what things it can do, what sounds it can make, and how that sounds affect those around it, right? So Gemini is this energy where we're finally realizing we have people around us and they're impacted by our energies. This is like a little kid who's playing and he's getting friends for the first time. He's like, oh, I can have a best friend. That's what that Gemini energy is. Initial communication and ideas. It can be reckless, but it can also be ingenious. It can be ungrounded, random, but it can also be fun, witty, and humorous. That is what's so cool about that Gemini energy. When evolved, Gemini focuses on basic communication skills, such as etymology and the impact it has on the self and others. Gnosis, truth, and knowledge. See, I think I might be channeling my own notes because that was kind of weird. Gemini is also focused on thoughts, which, by the way, thoughts are not facts. So we have to make sure to be still and allow a natural sifting to happen. Truth cannot dissolve like salt that is boiled. So I think this is kind of an extension of me helping people to understand like what's the evolved version of that Gemini energy that we all have within us. Truth cannot dissolve, right? Truth, ideas cannot dissolve. We also learn with that Gemini energy the power of ideas, the power of influence when we say things, how it impacts those around us, how it influences us when we maintain certain communication habits, when we say something repetitively, how it affects us or those around us. So truth cannot dissolve like salt that is boiled, salt of the earth. Have you ever heard that? Salt of the earth. I've heard that a few times in church, when I went here and there, and I didn't really know what it meant, but I was like, oh yeah, the salt is, when you boil the water, the salt is left at the bottom of the pot. So it's like, it cannot, in a sense, it can't just go away. Even if you boil the water, what's left is the salt, the truth. So the ocean is filled with salt. If you boil the ocean, the water might be gone, but the salt will be there. What is the truth? The salt. So Ardra is this energy of the pure rebel, a rebel with or without a cause. So first we have these energies of Shiva, Kali, and Rudra. I just want to pay homage to the deities and understanding that, the gods and the goddesses are multifaceted. It's important for us to acknowledge that Shiva, Kali, and Rudra are different. They all expose a different aspect of Ardra's energy. I also want to acknowledge that I'm more intuitive when it comes to my knowledge. I'm more intuitive. I get my research here and there randomly. A lot of it's intuitively guided, where I'm just drawn to certain patterns, but I'm still learning a lot about Shiva, Kali, and Rudra. Funny enough, I created this Shiva statue in college, and I didn't even know much about Shiva at the time. But this is the only statue I've ever created of a deity. I created it because I just wanted something cool, like a statue. And it's kind of crazy, going through the awakening process and being pulled to the culture of, I guess Hinduism, or you could call it the Vedas. Being pulled to this culture is so interesting because I feel at home with it, even though at the time I didn't know what this was. I wasn't quite ready to receive it. But now I am. So I have here raw freedom, destruction, and purification. Now that's kind of the broad themes or ideas around Shiva, Kali, and Rudra. Here's the differentiation. Shiva is more of a pure conscious representation. Shiva is also more of the masculine energy life force, whereas Kali can be an extension of Shakti, the feminine life force energy that exists in us. I feel like Shiva is often referred to as like more of a divine father. Kali has been referred to as a divine intense mother, and she is very much connected to that shadow. Now, I thought Shiva was more of that lighthearted energy, right? Actually, Shiva has that duality within him. He's about both. And this is where we're able to experience transformation, is at that apex of these two intense energies that we're learning how to navigate. Shiva helps us to detach. All Shiva, Kali, and Rudra bring a storm, but Shiva is about this learning how to detach in spite of the storm. And Shiva is about transformation. So I would actually connect this to labradorite crystal. You know, every time I meditate on that, I always see sort of that, it has like a blue holographic energy, very much like Shiva. I feel like that's the energy of Shiva, because that labradorite is connected to transformation. I always see someone going to the top of a mountain and getting knowledge, pure consciousness here. Shiva helps us to dissolve what's not real, transform, and sift through the illusion. Kali, interestingly enough, is often depicted dancing on Shiva. And I heard that her tongue sticking out is supposed to be a representation of her being shocked she's dancing on Shiva, that he's under her. But Kali and Shiva work together. This is our feminine, masculine life force energy within us. It's finding balance. Something I learned today is that, according to Rudolf Steiner's research, women have a masculine etheric body and men have a feminine etheric body. And this is what helps us to create union or balance within ourselves. Fascinating. I'm still looking into this, but something that came up, and I find that I feel like divinity just like brings research right into my lap. And I just take it and I'm like, let's put it in the presentation. Let's do it. So Kali is about sifting through the truth. She has the daggers, right? She cuts through the BS. This is a lie. This is a lie. That's a lie. This is not true. This is not true. And that's what helps to reveal what is true. Kali is about purification through destruction, right? So she brings sort of that stormy energies. Kali is more focused on those inner demons we have within us. You know, our fears, our anxieties. And Kali is also connected to karma. She helps us to transform those karmas, to go through purification so we no longer have to carry this heavy baggage of karma with us. And I always associated Kali with Mula Nakshatra. And Mula Nakshatra is connected to dissolving, and Mula's in Sagittarius. So we have here Rudra. Now Rudra is about weathering the storm, facing the storm, weathering the storm. And through this weathering and facing the storm, we're able to heal. We're able to heal by facing the storm beautifully. So I also wrote here raw freedom, right? So that is the core concept right here, what Ardra's about. This is the rebel, okay? This is a rebel who wants purification. And some people, when they don't evolve this energy, it becomes a rebel without a cause. It's like they don't know why they're rebelling. They're just doing it for the sake of rebelling, kind of like a kid, right? Kids get upset and they're just like, I'm mad. But they don't know, you know, they don't have a cause yet. They don't really have that strong sense of like injustice. They just sometimes feel like, oh, this is unfair. They're not thinking that deeply. But Ardra can bring that intelligent awareness where we're like, oh, okay, I'm rebelling because I'm against this system. And that's why I find that I'm a lone wolf, because I just don't relate to any system. Like everything I learn under people, it's cool. I get a little here, I get a little there, but by the end of the day, I kind of just navigate my own way of things. So that's how I would differentiate those three intense energies. Yeah, Rudra is bringing that healing to us, that healing that is most needed. And I feel like there's something quite raw with Ardra. You know, in the short that I created about it, raw. In the short that I created about it, I always get connected to like woods. Like I think when I read about it, I was imagining like woods, forests, just all kinds of entangled forest woods and vines happening. That to me is the energy of Ardra. And then like maybe there's a little thunderstorm going on, rain coming down. Yeah. So Ardra also is that spark of genius because we have that lightning. So these are these initial electrical charge of genius and ideas that come through. So you often find that people who have this placement are quite ingenious in the way that they do things. People are wondering, wow, you're so creative. How did you figure out how to do that? And they just have these electrical charges that are going through them that are giving them these inspired concepts and ideas at all times. Parash Trivedi, PT, has a Venus in Ardra, and he wrote the 27 celestial portals book, the Nakshatra book that he did, and he's also written many other books as well. It just seems like he most certainly gets those genius. When I've watched The Truman Show and I've watched his interviews, he has like an answer for everything, and I would like look at that. I would take what I would learn and I would try to think about, reflect on it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Before I watched one of the videos where he was talking about etymology, which Prash loves etymology. Before he talked about that, the letter D, I did my own research and I looked it up. And then when he talked about it, he said the same thing with some added knowledge on top of it. And I was like, this guy really knows his stuff. Pretty crazy. Okay. So Ardra brings that transformation. Sorry, I skipped a sentence here. Ardra brings the transformation through the destruction of false ideas. When the storm hits, lies cannot survive. False illusions fall away. This is your opportunity to exit the trauma loop. Yeah, so Ardra is that reminder of trauma. This is where we start to acknowledge and realize we have trauma of some sort that we are experiencing. And trauma is essentially a loop of stormy emotions and thoughts that we keep re-experiencing because we don't know how to exit it. And life is all about learning how to exit those trauma loops. Jupiter and Ardra is highly creative and destructive, both. And this is why it's creative, because it knows how to create and destroy. It knows how to let go of old ideas or concepts it's not interested in and move on. So these are artists who are constantly reinventing themselves, and they're okay with like exiting and letting things go and just like, bam, done. I don't care about it anymore. I'm ready to move on and create something else and new. And this energy can be very constructive, I think, for allowing something pure. You know, when this energy is evolved, it's a purification process. So the destruction isn't just to destroy things. That's a devolved expression of it. It's just like destroying just to destroy. No, you destroy things that don't serve you anymore. You destroy what is outdated. You destroy what is not true. You destroy the lies. If you destroy the lies, then creatively the truth will be born. This pure version of yourself will be born. So this energy is common amongst scientists, notable authors, teachers, researchers, Parash PT being one of them. This unevolved energy, it brings reckless, harmful, pessimistic, rebel without a cause, an emotional storm loop, victim mentality, childhood wounds, and trauma. So we all have those wounds and trauma, but this keeps us in the loop of it. That's the whole point. Get out of the loop. Fine. Or aspire to get out of the loop. Aspire for it. So the evolved version of Ardra is the destruction of the ego, leading to a radiant personality and pure intentions. This is the energy of dissecting and dissolving, which I love that. Not dissonance. Alliteration, is that what it's called? Alliteration, dissonance, alliteration, dissector and dissolver. That's a really good way to remember what Ardra is about. It's a dissector and dissolver. It likes to dissect, investigate, learn. Oh, what is this? What's this? What's this? How does this work? How does this work? And as you're seeing how things work, you're dissolving what's unimportant here. It's also a very deeply compassionate energy because this energy is like, it goes through really intense emotions. Now, I'm going to have some really cool examples that I'm going to share with you guys today, and you're going to see, really good examples of people who, and energies and things that exemplify this. So for example, before we get into our first example, the other theme around Ardra is adoption. So usually people with this placement, they feel different from their family. They feel like a black sheep, an oddball, an odd one, like they don't belong here. They belong somewhere else in a different culture, or part of a different culture. They feel called to adapt a different culture. These are people who go on their own seeking journey to find something else. But there's definitely a common theme around that childhood wound where wherever they grew up, they're different from their environment. I also want to share that Dr. Pytham, they also did a presentation about Ardra. I watched it. It was really amazing. I actually had some of my research prior to that. Like I said, I follow along with my own intuition when I'm guided to do things, but they also talked about that adoption energies, like, oh, you feel different. And I actually have this placement in my D9 chart somewhere significant. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I've always felt that way my entire life, like just different. And one of my favorite movies, so I actually watched this today. I turned it on to watch it with my nephew. And it was interesting watching it as an adult. But one of my favorite movies is Matilda. This is a perfect example of that Ardra energy. Mara Wilson, who is Matilda in the 1996 film, has a Mercury in Ardra. She also has a moon and Venus in Purnavasu. So you'll often find that this Ardra paired with Purnavasu themes is quite common amongst people, because we don't just want to experience Ardra, the storm. We want to experience a calm after a storm. So these are people who are often placed in movies that have an upturn, right? So they have a sort of intense negative experience that's showing up, a storm that shows up in their life, chaos that shows up in their life, and then calm. And you'll see that often in these people's movies, where they're able to find some sort of peace, find some sort of calm in their character's journey. So Matilda is about a young girl. She is sort of a black sheep. She's highly, highly intelligent. Her family is the complete opposite of her. I stated that they're poor mentally, in the sense that they're not interested in being educated. Matilda wanted to read books. She wanted to go to the library. She wanted to go to school. She ended up going to school 1 year late because her parents wouldn't send her. And she would go and take herself to the library years before that. And it's a movie, so obviously a little kid traveling to go to the library, not safe. But she was able to find the library and read all the books, and she educated herself. So she was essentially a savant or a prodigy. That's what it is. She was a prodigy. So she's the complete opposite of her family. Her family was interested in consuming excess TV. They're always watching TV, and TV takes us to predictive programming. Very interesting, right? So her family was just consumed in TV, which is about predictive programming. That's what TV does. If you keep sitting in front of it, you're not connected to it as much. If you rise into higher states of consciousness, and you're doing the groundwork for what you need to do to stabilize it, and you're staying connected with the divinity, and you're constantly in communication, or you're communicating with the divinity and acknowledging that connection and applying their advice, then, the predictive programming just doesn't capture you as much. And divinity will always educate you on how programming works. They'll say, okay, you're programmed. You can deprogram yourself. They also ate an excess of junk food. Her father was a thief. He would sell like lemons, like he was a thief, and he would sell like poor cars. He would price them really high just to make a lot of money. He would buy parts, I don't know if it was illegally, and he actually would tell his daughter to stay home. He wanted her to stay home and sign the packages. And her family was just always criticizing her, like, why don't you be like us? Her father at one point was trying to force her to watch TV when she wanted to read a book. And I was like, that's crazy. That's exactly how tribal programming works, by the way. So her father lied, he stole. Her mother in general abandoned and neglected her, didn't take care of her, fed her poor food. Her family ate a poor diet in general. And her family often took their anger out on her. So she was the black sheep. And this is that tribal programming that pretty much all of us have to go through in the spiritual journey. It's just understanding, like, our family's different from us, but there's a nuanced way to navigate this. Not everyone has to separate entirely from their family dynamics. It's just, you have to separate you have to detach. In the movie, she at some point starts to realize she has telepathic abilities. And so she takes revenge on her family. Now, vengeance or revenge is a common theme with Ardra natives. They feel quite resentful of the contrast between them and their circumstances. And I think Kurt Cobain was a really good example. He might have also had a debilitated moon, or he might have had a moon in Ardra, where he was really intense in terms of feeling like his childhood sucked, or he was neglected. He was abandoned. And this made him very rebellious growing up. I think his parents went through some sort of divorce, and he felt lost in the midst of it. So Matilda in the show, she's telepathic. She learned she has these abilities. But what's interesting is that what activated these abilities was anger. When her family or her father would yell at her and say, I'm big, you're small, I'm smart, you're dumb, it would trigger her. So her triggers actually triggered her telepathic abilities. And I was like, that's interesting. What that goes to show you is that trauma isn't bad. It's part of all of our programming, it's part of the process of waking up, but it can trigger the awakening. It can trigger the elevation, and that's what it's designed to do. She was highly intelligent. She was a prodigy. She was very smart. She could add up numbers like crazy. She read books far beyond her age. I think like 6th grade level stuff when she was in 1st grade. Yeah, she was a 1st grader, by the way. She used words and her mind to take revenge against her arch nemesis in this movie and book. I think it was originally a book as well, Miss Trunchbull, which is a funny name. But Miss Trunchbull essentially embodied a big bully. So again, Miss Trunchbull was all about name calling, and she was also a miser. She was always feeling like people were taking advantage of her. She didn't have enough money. Miss Trunchbull was essentially a big bully. She was a name caller. She had the most creative name calling, meanest titles that she would give to people, and I thought it was hilarious. She's also a miser. You know, when it came to situations, she would hoard things. She would just always be so negative. So Miss Trunchbull essentially represents that big bully, and we all have a big bully in our own heads without us needing a Trunchbull. And I think it's perfect that she was a bull, right? It makes you think of how we have those negative thoughts stuck in our head. And the trunch maybe makes me think of the trench and how we have to trench through the negativity. I'm just making things up on the spot. This is funny. So in the ending part, in one of the ending scenes of the movie, towards the end, she took revenge using words. So she wrote things on the board like she was a ghost, saying, I can't remember the exact words, but saying that she was caught, she was guilty essentially. And this was Matilda. Matilda used words to take revenge. So that's Ardra, Gemini energy coming through. And she used her mind. That's Ardra, Gemini energy as well. At the end, Miss Honey, who was her teacher, a teacher guru, maybe Jupiter and Ardra, I don't know. Just coming up with things here. But Miss Honey adopted her. So her and Miss Honey were essentially like soulmates. They're each other's soul family. They found this kind, love, and supportive nature in one another, and they saw each other as beings. And if you watch their interaction, it was like two beings who found each other. It was very beautiful. And they went on to create a peaceful life together. So that's that Purnavasu energy, the calm after the storm coming through. So I have some image here of Jupiter in Ardra. We got Shiva statue meditating. We get the thunder in the background. Again, the blue and purple is just really interesting. Kind of takes me to Kali and Rudra. Kali to me, because it's more feminine, maybe purple. Rudra maybe more blue. Who knows? I don't know what their specific colors are, but this intensity connects us to divinity. We have this adorable dog. We have the gavel behind the Jupiter word. We have the internet sign here behind Ardra and the internet address. Ardra is very much the internet. If you want to talk about internet and internet going crazy, I'm willing to bet you some sort of transit was happening at Ardra that initiated a lot of those ideas. So we have someone crying. So Ardra creates that purification process, and this is what creates diamonds. And diamonds connect us to our creative life force. That's why Ardra is so creative. Ardra, after it's tearful and it goes through these emotional storms in its life, actually is able to create from that experience. And it's able to, because the creative ideas come through so clearly, Ardra is able to connect to those gems of wisdom, insight, and knowledge. But yes, the diamond is indestructible, right? It goes through the storm and the intensity and the pressure of life to be created. That is Ardra. That's that radiant personality that comes through. So we have here a statue of Kali dancing on Shiva. We have some woods, magical forest woods behind. And then we also have the gavel, also representative of law and order, so Jupiter. And then we have musicians playing. So that's Ardra too. There's these musicians in this case are using like electric guitars. A lot of how we generate music is through electricity. Electrical means how I've created this video, and the mic I'm using is electrical too. So Ardra connects us to the electricity we use to communicate these ideas and concepts. We are part electricity. We have electricity going on inside of us that helps us to be able to communicate, use our nervous system to communicate and to take actions. So yeah, Ardra can definitely activate a lot of creative people and creative musicians. So let's go ahead and start with our first example here of not first. Let's go ahead and dive into our second example. We have here V for Vendetta. So a vendetta is a series of retaliatory events or vengeful acts. I believe this movie came out in sometime in the early 2000s, maybe like 2005. And I've watched this movie a couple of times, but it was this scene of V that particularly stood out to me. So let's talk about the archetypes. What I found interesting is that V in V for Vendetta, his archetype is the Avenger, right? He's kind of a hero, a masked hero who doesn't want people to know his identity. It doesn't matter because he's more focused on the ideas and the concepts and the revolution than he is on the glory of him doing this and him pursuing this. He doesn't need his name or his image stamped on it for it to be approved or for it to feel important. V is also the rescuer. So V actually helped in some sense to get to Evey. I saw this in the movie. Maybe this happened in the comic novels as well. But he was the rescuer, right? He helped her. He generously helped her. He helped to take her away from, I don't know, bad guys or someone else who might have taken advantage of her. He was also a poet. So in the movie, there's constant, like every time V is having his monologues, they're so poetic. He is like a poet with words. And I think a lot of really profound spiritual teachers are just like beautiful poets where they have a way with words. V also had the Messiah archetype. So this takes me to Aquarius Pisces energy. This is someone who wants to do something for humanity, who wants to help and to assist, also while surrendering, right? Surrendering and understanding that they have to some extent, I don't know, like sacrifice their ego or their old attached ideas or self-concepts to be able to do this. You have to release these old conceived ideas of your own life and what you were selfishly going to do and by yourself. Now you are here for a purpose and you're here for all of humanity. V was also the martyr. All right, there's that sacrifice coming through. He literally died at the end. He died and in a way that made him almost like a saint in a sense, that the work that he did for people, he was willing to sacrifice his life and his well-being if it meant the revolution happening. V was also very much the king archetype. He was about helping people in any way that he can, being a servant to the people. And I felt like V embodied Varuna's energy quite well, because Varuna is about balance, finding a way to balance the universe through extreme measures. Varuna is in charge of the cosmic waters. What the heck is the cosmic waters? You know, that's got to be like the everything energy. Sounds like it, right? This is that Saturn Rahu energy. This is this intense pressure one feels at needing to contribute something, at needing to make a difference in life and needing to do the right thing. That is the energy of Shatabishak. Shatabishak, which is what Rahu will be transiting in its transits, I think, starting November. Which, interesting enough, V from Vendetta, they always say November 5th, right? November 5th is the date of the rebellion. And that is actually a Libra energy. So it's still air sign energy coming through. The Guy Hawk mask that V would often wear represents that he's an idea. It's not about his personhood. It's not about his identity. But in real life, I will say, like, V for Vendetta, it captures this really intense idea of anarchy versus fascism. Fascism, am I saying that right? It really captures that idea well, but there are many flaws in this concept and idea. It's quite extreme, and it's definitely not what divinity is teaching us, which is why I called this video Divine Anarchy, because we're going to specify that's what my goal is just to get into divine anarchy, not just a distorted view of anarchy. So V always wore the mask, and that's because the identity to him wasn't important. He was willing to sacrifice that for the sake of the idea. Gemini, Ardra energy coming through here. So Hugo weaving has a Purnavasu moon. So Purnavasu is this energy of good again. Things are good again. It's also this energy of arrows, of one finding direction in their life, of knowing what direction to go after the storm clears away. Purnavasu is a nakshatra that comes after Ardra, after the storm. He also has a Mercury, Venus, Purva Bhadrapada. So Purva Bhadrapada is about karmic penance, responsibility. This is currently where Rahu is right now. It's in Purva Bhadrapada. So karmic penance, responsibility, the teacher as well. The teacher. Karmic penance takes us to law and order, because Purva Bhadrapada is an energy of Saturn and Jupiter. So it's like a very intense law and order. This is about like having to absolutely do the work to get to where you want to go. You cannot skip the work with this nakshatra. We have here Shatabi Shak. So Hugo Weaving has Mars and Shatabi Shak. There we go. Shatabi Shak. The Saturn Rahu influence, one who feels this extreme responsibility, one who's seen as a savior, right? The Messiah, the savior. Savior, responsibility, one who communicates with the masses. So this is where V was very effective. He knew how to communicate to the masses. He kind of, on some level, some fundamental level, he understood how people thought. He was also obsessive. So that's that Rahu influence, obsessive, extreme. So he would take extreme measures. And this is where I disagree, because the extreme measures is not something we're supposed to take, though I think some people will try to take it. Divinity doesn't call for you to take extreme measures with yourself, because you're a fragile body and you're a fragile person. They want you to take extreme. Life will in itself will bring extreme measures into your life. So you don't have to worry about creating that. If you have this placement, it's going to come in your life. It's just going to happen. You are here to weather the storm. So if you have this placement, it means you're pretty strong. You have a way of, you have the tools you need to weather this storm. It could be a very karmic placement too. So this could be a placement where one pays very intense karma for their past lives, as well as Purva Bhadrapada as well, is about paying that past life karma. If you did something in your past life where it just wasn't aligned, yeah, this is where this placement might bring that consequence. You'll see it. I also found it interesting that Hugo Weaving has a Jupiter in Mula Nakshatra, which is in Sagittarius. Mula Nakshatra is the opposite nakshatra it is sort of opposite of Ardra. And what makes it really opposite is that Mula is ruled by Ketu, Ardra is ruled by Rahu. Mula is ruled by Ketu, Ardra is ruled by Rahu. So they're like opposites yet the same. So, because Mula is all about dissolution of lies. It's that priesthood energy. Whereas I feel like Ardra is more of a teacher. Mula is more of a priest. It's very spiritual belief system kind of energy coming through. So they're complementary signs. So he also had a Revati sun. So to me, Revati, because this is the final nakshatra, takes us to absolution, ending of cycles, absolution, ending of cycles, and inheritance, wealth of knowledge. It's also a very compassionate placement. Vigi had a lot of compassion for the people. That's why he worked so hard. He loved Evey, not romantically like they depicted in the movies. He loved her just as a person, as a being. He loved her. He supported her. And he was willing to take extreme measures with that Varuna energy in order to help her wake up. So the huge idea behind and lesson behind V was that ideas are powerful. He was meant to be a mentor. And so this is what divinity is to us. They are our mentors, they're our teachers. And through them teaching us this divine knowledge and insight, they pass the baton on. And they generously pass this knowledge on. And this is what's important for us to do. If you are stepping into, we're all teachers, every single one of us. We all go through life experiences where we learn something. So it's not like, oh, if I have an air placement, that I'm a teacher. You're a teacher by the example you lead your life with. That's how you're the teacher. And that's how you become the mentor who passes on this insight and knowledge to anyone who's around you who can learn from you. The other concept was sacrifice. He sacrificed. So there's some level of sacrifice that comes with stepping into the truth. You have to sacrifice your old self first. You have to sacrifice your ego. You have to kind of give away that stuff. It's not about like what they've written in some of the religious texts where you're sacrificing people and all these other weird things. No, like you got to sacrifice something. What are you willing to give up? And the divinity doesn't ever ask you to give up anything that you need. They always ask you to give up things that you don't need to become clear about what you do need. Sometimes you have to sacrifice that lazy comfort you are attached to become more disciplined. So I have the charts here. I kind of talked about it I'm just going to scroll over. You see the charts, you see how everything is lining up. This is Hugo Weaving's charts. And it says he's a Gemini ascendant. Oh, no, he's not. This is just the degrees that was given because of the website. They don't know what ascendant sign he is, actually. But look, he has K2 Venus, Sun, Pisces. That's really interesting. So that, actually, I didn't catch that, but that K2 Venus Pisces energy, that's Purva Bhajapada. Yep. That is Purva Bhajapada for you, right there. K2 and Venus. Wow, and look at that. They're right next to each other. That's intense spiritual. Whoa, that is so intense. K2 is all about dissolution. So I imagine when it came to his relationship dynamics, he had to dissolve a lot of that. He was very effective in his role in V for Vendetta. And I think once I heard his voice in that movie, I was like, who is this guy? Like, I want to know what other movies he's in. And honestly, I can't remember if I've seen another movie he's in. But this guy, the reason why he's able to make an impact is I imagine he's gone through really intense experiences in his life with that karmic penance theme showing up in his chart in the dissolution. It shows up multiple times with that Mula, and then it shows up with that K2 Venus. That's a dissolution right there. Pisces in general can be like a broader understanding of dissolution. Like that is a common theme in his life. Okay. So let's talk about Evey. So Evey was the other main character. She was the student, right? She was the student that V passed his knowledge, his idea onto. And this is who we are under divinity. We are the students who they pass their knowledge onto. This Evey represents all of us. So some of her archetypes was the prostitute. She was literally a prostitute in the comic novel. She was literally a prostitute. So I think around the age of 16, she was a teenager in the book. So she didn't have any romantic involvement with V. He was more of a kin to her, like family, but not a romantic partner. So prostitute energy connects us to Earth. Prostitute archetype is what we all have. We all have this issue of not giving into physical, monetary limitations when it comes to what it is we're wanting to create. Divinity calls for us to follow our heart, but we're always going to be misdirected or delusioned into thinking that's not the case. So this is something that we all give into. We have to all learn this lesson. And it's very much an earthly thing, right? Understanding how to believe in the true abundance, letting go of the fear. So we have your networker. She was also the networker. So in the movie, I think she worked for some sort of reporting company or something like that. But in general, Evey passed on V's concepts and ideas. She connected with the people, so she was a networker, right? And the network just makes us think of the connection that we create amongst one another. So she understood that, and we all are part of the network of life. We're all a part of the network of life and the network of knowledge and wisdom. So the networker is also very much air sign energy. Could be any of them: Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. She was also a prisoner, literal prisoner. So that brings an intense Saturn energy. Saturn brings that prison energy. We all have a Saturn in our chart. Wherever Saturn is in our chart, we're probably going to learn a huge lesson around being a prisoner or being trapped in the matrix. But at one point, V captures Evey, and yeah, I'm going to talk about this scene. And she is a prisoner, but he does that to help her, to free her. So Evey goes through a rebirth during this imprisonment, and during that imprisonment, she's traumatized and transformed. So she was interrogated, and V was actually pretending to be an interrogator who was trying to get the information out of her about his whereabouts, about V's whereabouts. He's like, you must reveal his identity. You must tell us where he is. And she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't do it. She also received or found like letters in a jail where V essentially, he simulated the prison. That's very much Matrix energy coming through. That's why I like this movie. It's a simulation of a prison. He simulated the prison in the prison, which is kind of crazy. And he simulates that there's this jail mate. So this is a common theme in a lot of like Purva Bhajapada, Uttara Bhajapada themed movies where someone has a cellmate, a jail mate, which that would be pretty much everyone here on Earth, who we connect with to stay hopeful. That's why the universe would never put humans alone. We need each other. There will always be a network. And the truest divine network is network to divinity. So you can't ever be alone. You're not alone. You're surrounded by so much. Just like the Truman Show, we are being watched like we are in a reality TV show. You're always being watched. So in that letter, she got letters from her jailmate about a lesbian woman who was like tortured and ended up dying and all of these things that she went through. And that's the energy of Ardra and Gemini, being transformed by words or being inspired by words to transform. So Natalie Portman, looking at her chart here, she's a Libra ascendant. So Libra energy, whenever you have this is all about impactful alliances. This is a lesson in working with others. So in this sense, Evey worked with V. She partnered with V to maintain strength. In a lot of Natalie Portman's movies, she pairs with someone to gain her strength. She was, I don't know, not Princess Leia, but Padme, right? And she was married to Anakin. They had kids and they birthed the new Earth, basically. Like her children ended up being the savior or whatever of Star Wars. So it's that alliance that created an impactful ripple effect. So Evie's alliance with V was important because he passed the knowledge on to her before he died. Natalie Portman also has Ardra placement, Mercury and Venus. Not shocked here. So this is like media, creative, energy, and genius. And Natalie Portman is essentially an acting prodigy. She started acting as a child. You watch some of her old movies, it's just as good as her current movies or her best movies as an adult, where she's just so effective in her acting. One of my favorite movies that I watched her in is Where the Heart Is. I think that's what it is. Where the Heart Is. Where she gave birth to her daughter in Walmart. So Ardra also exaggerates, right? Very good for creativity, very good for dramatization, for sure. We have your Uttara Falguni. I pointed this out because Uttara Falguni is like the student. It's like the student mentor energy. It's both. So this is where one learns under others and then becomes a mentor itself. And Natalie Portman, being a child actor, I'm sure she always learned under someone who knew much more than her. And she seemed to really take the craft very seriously. Till this day, she looks like she takes it so seriously. So I imagine she received a lot of assistance and guidance from people. That's what Uttara Falguni, it's about free sharing. It's about that helpful energy. We got Jupiter, that's the guru, the mentor. We got Saturn, who could also be like kind of like the old man who creates those restrictions and those boundaries, tells you don't do this, don't do that. And I think she learned a lot of that. That's what helped to cultivate her discipline, and probably as a young child too. Which, like, how is she so disciplined with this acting as a child? Yeah, she was born with it for sure. So we have here, the main lesson for Evey was to die free rather than live in fear. Die free rather than live in fear. And I think this is definitely advice from divinity, though it's not as scary. They want us to live free. They want us to live free rather than live in fear. So I would change the wording. I would say live free rather than live in fear. And then ultimately this body or this lifetime that you're living, it will end and you will die free, which will be great. It'll be so liberating. But liberate yourself before you die. Don't wait to die to feel liberated. Have a loyal heart. Evey was loyal to V. She was loyal to V. She believed in his ideas and concepts, and she saw the poet in him, and she sensed, like, some of the things she's like kind of crazy, but some of these things I agree with. Now, in the movie, it is exaggerated. I, again, don't encourage those extreme measures. We are not Varuna, okay? There's a reason why we have divinity around us. Divine and the universe is just doing what it needs to do. The multiversal laws are activated as they need to be activated. We do not need to be the laws. And when we try to do that, we're just going to get ourselves burned. And we're the ones who are going to be shocked by the lightning and be rendered paralyzed if we try to do that. That's not our part to play. So there's also integrity and identity. And this also connects me to that Leo energy. So Natalie Portman has that moon in Leo. This is about honor, respect, and authority. Honor, respect, and authority, and lots of creative energy there too. So that's the loyal heart, integrity, and identity. So Evey was able to redefine herself. And I feel like this is often a common feminine theme in movies, is women are often trying to search for their own identity. Who am I? What do I want? Whereas men are often trying to like help someone, like help an organization, like save the world in some way. But the women are always like, who am I beyond this organization? Who am I separate from this thing? Even though I'm a mother, am I still myself? And who am I in spite of being a mother? So yeah, I think that was definitely a common theme around Evey. We have K2 going through Leo right now. You might feel that's a theme for you too. Yeah, so just like looking at her chart here, we can kind of see some of those energies exemplified. We get that Mercury-Venus conjunction here, and it's happening at right on top of each other, just like Hugo weaving. That's really weird. He had a Venus Ketu, and she has a Mercury Venus, and these are Ardra, so Rahu. So maybe they had a little, what do you call it, chemistry with that polarity between the two of them. Really cool. Very unique. Yeah, and she even has that Virgo, and he had that Pisces. So maybe a bit of polarity that the two of them were experiencing between each other that maybe created a better film. But yeah, that's kind of intense. You know, I imagine, you know, whenever planets are that close to each other, it creates like problems where, for example, for me, like I have a Mercury-Jupiter tight conjunction 1 degree apart. I have communication problems at times where I like space out. I forget how to talk. I slur. I don't make sense. I repeat the same thing over. My sentence structure is kind of all over the place. Then I have moments where I'm just like so focused, so in the zone. And to me, that's the best way to work with these kind of conjunctions, is like it's more intuitive. Like you can't think about it so hard. Otherwise, you're just going to be frozen in place. You won't be able to move gracefully through those energies. All right, so here are some of the quotes that showed up in this, a couple of scenes. We'll talk about some of those scenes here. So we have here, words will always retain their power. So this was a monologue that V did. Words will always retain their power. Words offer the means to meaning, and for those who listen, the enunciation of truth. To think and spark as you see fit. You now have senses and systems of surveillance, coercing your conformity. They will be held accountable. If you're looking for the guilty, you need to only look in the mirror. I know why you did it. I know why you were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There are a myriad, is that how you say it? There were a myriad of problems that which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense. Fear got the best of you. Silence, obedience, end of silence. Justice and freedom are more than words. They are perspectives. So throughout the movie, I think V gave several monologues. I haven't rewatched the movie. I just found some scenes to recall what was coming through, and I just wanted to focus on the themes. I didn't really want to focus on the movie as a whole, and what it was there to communicate. So, because often I find that when I dissect movies, there's like things that stick with the theme, and there are things that kind of go outside of it and are irrelevant to what I'm trying to communicate. In this scene I wanted to talk about, this is the scene I fixated on when I was watching clips around V for Vendetta. So the reason why I chose this scene around, I don't know if it was 1.5 years or 2 years ago, right around that I started my channel. So it was around 2023. In 2023, I had a vision of V for Vendetta. I had a vision that I saw Evey putting her hands like this, and she was in the rain, and she was like relieved. So when I had that vision, that really put things into place, and it put things into perspective for me, because that was showing me what liberation feels like. So I used it in my, I don't know if it was my Unlocked Karma or the Dark Night of the Soul. It might have been the Dark Night of the Soul video I'd made. And since then, I've been wanting to use that clip. So that's what this clip is here for this Jupiter in Ardra energy. I think it communicates it perfectly. So first you have here, Evey has been released of the jail. In the movie scene, I remember that he left the door open. He just opened it. And he walked away, and she came out, and she realized she was in a simulation. It wasn't real. And this is what truth is like. This is what that awakening experience is. That door doesn't open when we want it to open. In fact, sometimes that door, it feels like we just want that door to open, and it feels like we're about to, like, life is about to end. If that door doesn't open, I can't take any more. But sometimes you're surprised at how much, when you just keep taking it one day at a time, how much you are able to endure through that simulation. And we have to pass those tests. We have to be able to rise into those higher states of consciousness in order for us to exit the prison. So divinity knows the timing for that. They know when the perfect time is for that. With Saturn in Pisces and that transit happening, I imagine that this is going to, many people are going to break free of that prison. That's what's happening. People are being activated to break free of that prison. Jupiter and Ardra is that rebellion, break free of the prison. And this is a time where we're going to be getting those inspired ideas for how to really break free here. And the thing is, we've been getting them. It's just maybe this is going to be a time for us to really overcome a test. So the door just opens for her. She realized she's in a simulation. She comes out and she realized she's in V's home where she originally was. And she realizes V has been doing this to her. And this is her response. It's so Jupiter. It's so Ardra. And Natalie Portman captured her Mercury, Venus, Ardra beautifully. Due to copyright restrictions, I will be reenacting it. V says, "Fortunately, I got to you before they did." You got to me. You did this to me? You cut my hair? You tortured me. You tortured me. Why? You said you wanted to live without fear. I wish there'd been an easier way, but there wasn't. So she's like, you tortured me. Why? Guys, we're in a simulation. Have you ever been so angry at God and just wondering, like, why? Why would you put me in this experience where I feel pain and heartache and heartbreak? Why? Who would it call for this? Who would ask for this? And I get it time and time again in my songs that we called for this. It's just we're so identified with our identity, we don't know this. So it's not as much of a soul trap as one would think. It's part of the universal laws, and it's part of it was partially a choice or a behavior that got us here. Because free will, divinity always gives us a choice. They always say, do you want to do this? Or this is what will happen if you do this. And so she's coming to this realization, and V says, well, I wish there was an easier way. But you said you wanted to break free of fear. I wish there was an easier way. So that goes to show you there really isn't an easier way. It's going to be painful one way or the other, right? Whether it's more mental, it shouldn't be as physical. If you're rising to higher states of consciousness, it won't be as much of a physical game unless you really need that to trigger you. If you go through a health situation, maybe, but that's usually reserved more for younger souls. Usually older souls is very psychological warfare, like nobody's business. You wouldn't even know. You would look at someone, you'd be like, you went through all of that. Psychologically, they're going through a lot. Those peaceful teachers and gurus at a high level of consciousness, like psychologically, the pain that they went through was a lot. My God. I know you may never forgive me, but nor will you ever understand how hard it was for me to do what I did. Every day I saw myself everything you see in me now. Every day I wanted to end it, but each time you refused to give in. I knew I couldn't. So what that tells me, that's that Revati, Hugo Weaving's Revati, his Pisces energy coming through, the compassion he speaks with in the scene is so beautiful. And I think that's exactly how divinity is with us. They're so compassionate. They know we're suffering. They know we're in pain. They know what we're going through. And I often get that through the messages. They're like, we know it's hard. We know it's exhausting. We know you're going through a lot, but we need you to continue to do the work, and we need you to believe if you want to break free. You're sick. You're evil. You could have ended it, Evey. You could have given in, but you didn't. Why? So she said, you're sick, you're evil. That's judgment, right? That's very Gemini. That's the mental judgment that we all have. That's that inner bully in us that's just like, this is wrong. And in life, we go through things where we're just like, this is wrong. This isn't fair. This isn't right. This is to treat some that way. I see people constantly in the comment section just always like so angry at life and just be like, this isn't fair. This isn't right. And I'm like, but it's happening. Have you ever wondered why it's happening? Why does it keep happening generation after generation? Why do these trauma stuff, and people keep blaming it on nostalgia? They keep saying, well, there was a time where life was better. I'm like, just so many years ago, people who look like me didn't have certain freedoms. Okay, so this idea of like there was a better time to me just doesn't exist. It really doesn't exist. Leave me alone. I hate you. That's it. See, at first I thought it was hate too. Hate was all I knew. It built my world, imprisoned me, taught me how to eat, how to drink, how to breathe. I thought I'd die with all the hate in my veins, but then something happened. It happened to me just as it happened to you. So after that, V talks about how hatred, that's definitely Ardra too, right? That's that child wound and that trauma. It's like that hatred and the anger that comes out where you just feel so resentful towards like, this isn't fair, this isn't right. And he said that hatred actually motivate him. And this also brings me back to where I talked about Mara Wilson from Matilda, where her character used the anger to trigger her into her telepathic abilities. And telepathy is the true telepathic communication is with divinity. So you're getting those higher divine messages. She had access to her higher divine powers, messages, once she was able to use, to alchemize, to transmute that trigger, that pain, and that pressure. And yeah, so best way is to not act on revenge, but to like transmute that energy, process it. And the other thing I didn't write down that also popped into my head was therapy, Gemini therapy. Therapy to me is the beginnings of people exploring that introspection. I don't think therapy actually works, because I've been therapying myself for so many years. And basically what you're doing is you're regurgitating the story and you're trying to understand the story, but it's not the story. The story isn't important. It's the lessons, it's the knowledge, it's the wisdom. So dissect your story to get to the gem of the wisdom and the knowledge of what you're here to learn. And that will give you instant access to the lessons, and then you'll be able to get over that hump easier. And the story keeps you in the trauma loop. That's why therapy doesn't really work. You're just talking about your problems, but at some point, also the other reason why therapy is very limited is you have to exercise your own awareness. You have to do that. Your therapist can't do that for you. You have to say, I want to think better. And then you have to start doing it. To me, therapy can be sort of lazy work in the sense that it just doesn't do enough for what you need. You also will give your power away in thinking that this therapist is enlightening you, when honestly, the therapists themselves, depending on their states of consciousness, they probably can't elevate you all that much. In fact, probably anyone who is elevated into a higher state of consciousness is probably not a therapist. They're not a therapist because they're probably just like living life doing whatever. Boxing yourself into therapy, there's rules to being a therapist. You have to pass certain tests. You have to talk to your clients in a certain way. And it's very regulated in a sense. Maybe some people will say it's irregulated, but people are always trading their therapists. And I'm like, you don't need a therapist. They're basically a mirror. Just talk to yourself. Journal. Talk to yourself, and you will be able to move through that stuff. Shut up. I don't want to hear your lies. Your own father said that artists use lies to tell the truth. Yes, I created a lie, but because you believed it, you found something true about yourself. Okay, he just talked about lies there with that Gemini energy. Artists use lies to tell the truth. Divinity is the artist. Okay, it just showed up for me. Divinity is the artist. They architect this universe. So they're saying artists use lies to tell the truth. So that's very much the paradox of the universe. It's like, actually dissect the lie, you'll get to the truth. Experience the lie, you'll get to the truth at some point. Yes, very, very paradoxical. No. What was true in that cell is just as true now. What you felt in there has nothing to do with me. He's saying even though it was a simulation, you found something that's not tangible, that's true about yourself, that cannot be dissolved. Like the salt, you found something that's true in the simulation as it is outside the simulation. I can't feel anything anymore. Don't run from it, Evey. You've been running all your life. So originally when I heard this scene, when she said, I can't feel anything anymore, I thought that was like a good thing. I'm like, oh, you don't feel the pain anymore? Maybe you just moved on. But actually, what does she start doing in this scene? She starts hyperventilating. As Evey continues to sob, V says, listen to me, Evey. This may be the most important moment of your life. Commit to it. So V tells her to commit to it. And that's what divinity is always telling us when we're going through these emotional, psychological warfare. Commit to the psychological warfare. Instead of working yourself up and getting like panicky and hyperventilating, where you're just like, I can't process this stuff. Now, I want to say this, kids these days, they process a lot of emotions sooner and younger. And they go through this at much younger ages. More than ever, they need that guidance to figure out how to process these intense psychic impressions here and energies they're moving through, and all of the density that wants to be released, the pain that wants to be released. V tells Evey, they took your parents from you. They took your brother from you. They put you in a cell and took everything they could take except your life. And you believed that that was all there was, didn't you? The only thing you had left was your life. But it wasn't, was it? You found something else. In the cell, you found something that mattered more to you than life. So he's saying she found something more important than her life. That's the martyr. Then V says, it was when they threatened to kill you, unless you gave them what they wanted. You told them you'd rather die. You faced your death, Evey. You were calm. You were still. Try to feel now what you felt then. And then she says, I need air. Gemini! Or all the air signs. Then Evey says, yes? I'm dizzy. I need air. Please, I need to be outside. And then V says, there's a lift. It'll take us to the roof. They took a lift to the roof. They took a lift to the roof. Higher state of consciousness. And then Evey refuses the jacket he wants to put on her. She's like, nah, I'm good. I want to feel everything. Lightning, and then it it zooms into the music. So Ardra again, communication, song of life. Yeah, there's just so many messages to dissect, and if you were to watch that movie, for sure it would help you to revisit these concepts and ideas. But she said at the end, God is in the rain. That is Ardra. Thunder, lightning, boom. That is Ardra in a nutshell. So what were the main points that came through? So ultimately, Jupiter and Ardra is communicating this concept of the divine play. This is also Dharma, the divine play. If we see life as a divine play, it can work in our advantage. Otherwise, we see it as a Dharma, and that's more of the karmic loop that we get stuck in. To play with the story and find a way to navigate it, become the hero of your journey as Evey did. She found her power. And also, the motion she was doing, this is the receptivity motion, the Y, the openness. When we put our arms up, that's symbolizing our connection and our receptivity to divinity. That's our energy. And that's our energy. The more knowledge we seek and the more we apply it to our advice, this is what's happening to our aura, our energy. It's those neural connections are being formed. Those electrical vibrations and energies are being formed with divinity here. The other main point was that control versus freedom. So the whole point of him fighting against the government was to fight against control. But we all have controlling ways in us. The government is just a reflection and mirror of what exists inside of us versus the freedom that we're desiring, we're seeking. So they're two different things. You know, there's self-control, but there's control. Like if you have to control anything outside of yourself, that's what the government is. If you have to control anything outside of yourself, it's not freedom. It's not freedom. It doesn't feel like freedom. So Jupiter and Ardra is helping us to align with these concepts and ideas that help to liberate us and understand what is real freedom. This is going to be a common conversation during this period. What is freedom? What do we need to liberate ourselves? What's really going to help to liberate us? So people have been having these conversations. They've been talking about the shift. Still got to do the work. Okay, what do you actually have to do to create freedom? This is a co-creative experience. You don't just get freedom. There's responsibility that comes with it. You have to do some things. You have to abide by divine laws. And the more divine laws you abide by, the more freedom you have access to, right? The more you can play. I told this to my nephew. When you listen, the more you have time, you have more opportunities to play. When you don't listen, the more homework you're going to have. The more work you have to do because you're not doing the homework, right? With your behavior, your attitude, your response. You're not responding respectfully, responsibly, or correctly. Instead, you're reactive. So when we're reactive, we feel that weight of control on us. So we also have fascism versus anarchy. So fascism is about that government domination, where the government's saying, okay, we're going to create more and more restrictions and rules that control your life and that decide your fate. Anarchy is about self-governance. So The divine wants us to be self-governed and think for ourselves. Save yourself. Think for yourself. Let go of any false notions of a savior. Divine truth subsumes identity. But while you are in your form, you can choose every day what to participate in. This is the game of life. This is the divine play. What do you want to participate in this divine play? Do you want to be self-governed, or you want to be ruled under? You want to be governed? Would you like to be self-governed? You have to participate in self-governing yourself. That means that you have to take care of yourself. Now, when we're giving away responsibility and we say, well, something else, some other system is going to take care of my abundance, my health, then we're giving away our power and we're saying, I want to be governed. I don't want to self-govern. Self-govern is where you find the actual freedom. So some of the differences in the movie was that V was representing the idea, the concept. The movie looked like it was portraying more of a American perspective, which when you think about Ardra, I don't know, maybe that was actually accurate. Maybe that was meant to happen, right? This rebellion. But the author who wrote V from Vendetta said he was not in support of the film because V was supposed to be this idea and concept. It wasn't supposed to be about government. It was supposed to be about really liberating and freeing people and teaching them anarchy, self-governance, not teaching them to create a different system. So the movie seemed like it was like, okay, we're going to create a different government to improve on it. But anarchy is not creating a different government. It's about no government. No system works. You know, people are always having this argument about the system. And what I have to say about that, or say to that, is no system works for nobody. The only system that really works is the divine system. But all of the systems of the world do not work. Some people say, oh, the system isn't fair to these people or that people. I'm like, it's not, it doesn't work for nobody. Everybody's operating in a dysfunctional way. To me, you're lower in your states of consciousness. You're more in survival when you're saying that the system goes against me. I'm like, the system sucks for everybody. Look at the people who seem like they're doing well in life. They ain't. What are they doing? Most of the people, we've all done it, me included. But what we're doing is we are often overcompensating. Or overcompensating for something. That's what happens when you give your life over to the system. And when you open your eyes, it's kind of sad. It just gets sadder and sadder. I don't know what to say. It's sad. It's like, wow, people really give away their freedom for free. You don't even have to pay them anything to give it away. They will just give it away without even thinking about it. And that's kind of crazy how we prostitute ourselves in life. We just can't stop giving away our power, which what the prostitute is about. It's about empowerment. We can't stop giving away our power to other systems. We just can't stop it. So whose fault? Our fault. Whose fault? Our fault. Who's at fault? Just as V said, look in the mirror. Our fault. We're responsible for ourselves. We could choose to be self-governed, but we say, oh, well, they can do it. So divine anarchy, this is about the rebellion. A lot of people are going to be experiencing breakthroughs where they see the truth of what it means to play this game of life and what they really need to do. They're going to become more curious and invested in freeing and liberating themselves from the system. So final point to make here, we have the United States Declaration of Independence chart here. Interestingly enough, it has the ascendant of Jeshta. Jeshta is about divine protection and the king, divine protection. We got Dashnishta, which is about the following the rhythm of life. We got Shravana, which is about listening. It's more of that counselor energy coming through. We have Chitra, which is about that creative abilities. Maybe that's why people are always doing talented things in the United States. We got the Saturn Chitra, like people are the most disciplined when it comes to sharing their creative gifts here. And then also maybe more superficial, I don't know, with that Chitra energy, which is about beautiful pictures. We got Rahu, North Node in Aslesha. Aslesha is the beginning of the Kundalini awakening. This is connected to the Ashlesh, the snake here. the Kundalini, the spine, the awakening initiation starts in that Cancer energy. We have here Mars and Mrigashira. Mars and Mrigashira. Mrigashira is the intellect, curious deer who wants to know, who wants to learn. So maybe here we like to learn. But then, of course, we have Jupiter, and we have Venus in Ardra, and we have Sun in Purnavasu, which is and then we have Mercury in Pusha. So they kind of fall in order there. We got Jupiter, Venus, Sun, and then Mercury. So Jupiter and Venus are in the storm. Sun is the calm after the storm. And Mercury is the calm after the storm. It's like that discipline after the storm. I think I don't know if it was Purnavasha or Pusha that's connected to like flower or flowering, flowers, beautiful flowers. So seeing the beautiful flowers in the garden grow. Yes, so we are experiencing a bit of a global declaration of independence. This is affecting us all with that Saturn in Pisces. This is a global experience where we're all wanting to claim our independence. There's going to be a lot of misinformation in the way that this energy is communicated in the news. People out there don't not have the answers. The only answer is to do your inner work and to just keep doing your inner work. So whatever storm wants to show up for you, just know that this is your time to beautifully claim your independence, to choose to be self-governed. And that self-governing is coming through the guidance, and along with the guidance and the flow of life and divinity, who's working with you to help you to liberate yourself. Jupiter and Ardra is bringing that many teaching moments. You know, people say a tweeting moment or teaching moment. This is the time of the teaching moment. And we're going to be exchanging a lot of conversations, podcasts, social media. We're going to be talking about this openly, saying, wow, what are you learning? How's this working for you? What's not working for you? And yeah, we're going to enjoy that. It's going to be overall just like very insightful discussions during this period. I'm so excited. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation of Jupiter and Ardra. Have a beautiful day or evening whenever you're watching this. And I will see you for next time for a podcast or a deep dive into one of the transits that we're experiencing. I believe I will be posting a part 2 to Rahu in Aquarius and Ketu in Leo, where I talk about the conscious coupling that we're experiencing with divinity. And that will be a fun, shorter conversation and discussion. Bye.